Mama, don't cry. I will make you proud. I promise.
Marcus, you are carrying this family on your back now. Do not forget where you come from.
Brother! iPhone 17! Don't forget! Safe journey!
Tanya! Is that what you're saying?
Go well, my son. God will go before you. Just send the fabric when you reach.
I don't know when I'll be back.
You will come back successful. That is all I know.
Marcos, I have been looking at this, the one from Balogun Market, and the George fabric, and the Ankara. Before December, don't mummy me, just send the money.
Mummy, I hear you, I hear you. The lace, the George, the Ankara.
I'm working on it. Just give me small time, okay? I promise.
Bro, okay, so I made a list, Max. The Brazilian hair, 28-inch, and Italian sneakers. That's it. That's all I'm asking. It's not even plenty.
Tanya! iPhone 17, do you know how much that costs? You said that's all like it's pure water money. Relax, I'm not an ATM. Marcus, I have written everything down. The house needs finishing. And the Toyota Highlander. Highlander, not Corolla. That is all I will say.
Yes, sir. I hear you, Daddy. The house, the Highlander.
I'm handling it. Just trust me. I will not let this family down.
There is a kind of love that does not announce itself. It does not arrive with flowers or grand gestures or the right timing. It arrives quietly, in a moment so ordinary you almost miss it, and then it changes everything. Marcus did not come to America looking for love. He came carrying something far heavier than a suitcase. He came carrying his mother's prayers, his father's pride, his sister's wish list, and the crushing weight of a family that had already decided what his life in America was supposed to look like. He was 23 years old. He had $47 to his name on his worst night. And the last thing, the absolute last thing, on his mind was a woman. But life has never cared much about what we have planned. And on a cold Thursday morning in Houston, Texas, in the lobby of a building he had no business being inside, Marcus looked up, and Catherine looked back. And nothing, not his poverty, not her billions, not the ocean between their words, was ever the same again. Stay with me. Because this story is going to take you somewhere you did not expect to go. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And if you are new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marcus grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, the firstborn son of Thomas and Gloria. Thomas drove a second-hand taxi for 20 years. Gloria sold fabric at the local market, waking before sunrise every single day, her hands rough from folding and carrying boats of cloth in the heat. They were not a wealthy family. But they were a family full of dreams, and every single one of those dreams had Marcus's name written on it. He was the firstborn son. In their world, that meant everything. It meant he was the one who would live them. The one who would renovate the house, buy his father a car, send his sister to a good school, and make the neighbors look at the family differently. Marcus knew this from the time he was old enough to understand it. He carried it quietly, the way a good son does, without complaint, without resentment, just with a deep and steady sense of responsibility that sat in his chest like a stone. He was brilliant in school. He worked hard. And when his father's wealthy friend, a Nigerian-American businessman named Richard who had built a successful logistics company in Houston, Texas, offered to sponsor Marcus and help him get a foothold in America, the whole family celebrated like it was the best day of their lives. His mother cooked a pot of pepper soup that filled the whole house with warmth. His father invited neighbors over and sat at the head of the table with the particular pride of a man who believes his sacrifices have finally been justified. And his younger sister Tonya, 19 years old, full of life and completely convinced that her brother going to America was the greatest gift the universe had ever given her, danced in the living room without a single care in the world. Marcus sat at that table, watching all of them, feeling two things at once, deep gratitude and a quiet, nameless fear. He was going to America. He was going to build something real. But somewhere beneath the celebration, he could already feel the weight of what they expected him to carry. Now, Catherine Ellison. The only daughter of Harold Ellison, one of the most powerful real estate developers in the state of Texas. Harold had built his empire from nothing, a black man from Alabama who had clawed his way up through decades of hard work, legal battles, racial barriers, and sheer relentless will, until the Ellison name meant something in every boardroom in Houston. Catherine grew up inside that empire. She was educated at the best schools. She traveled the world. She sat in meetings by the time she was 25 and ran her father's charitable foundation by 30. She was sharp, composed, and beautiful in the way that powerful women are beautiful, not just in appearance but in presence. When Catherine Ellison walked into a room, people noticed. But here is the thing about Catherine that nobody talked about at those fancy dinner tables and charity galas. She was lonely. Not the kind of lonely that comes from being alone, she was never alone. She was surrounded by people everywhere she went. She was lonely in the way that people are lonely when everyone around them wants something from them. Every man she had ever dated had wanted access to her father's world. Every friendship had a ceiling built from envy or ambition. And Catherine, behind the composure, behind the designer clothes and the perfectly managed foundation events, was a woman who had never once been loved simply for herself. Does that sound familiar to anyone watching? Have you ever been the person that everyone wanted to be close to, but nobody actually saw? Marcus arrived in Houston on a Tuesday morning in late October. Richard met him at the airport, shook his hand firmly, and said, "Welcome to America, son. Now the real work begins." Richard was generous but practical. He gave Marcus a room, helped him enroll in a workforce training program, and connected him with a part-time position at his logistics company in the mailroom. The pay was modest. After food, transportation, and the basic cost of surviving in a new city, Marcus had very little left. But the calls from home started immediately. His mother called from the airport before he had even collected his luggage. His sister Tonya called before he had left the arrivals terminal. His father called that same evening. And every call had a list. Fabric. iPhone 17 Pro Max Brazilian hair. Italian shoes. House renovation. A car for Papa. Marcus answered every call. He promised nothing, but he absorbed everything. And quietly, invisibly, the weight began to build. 6 weeks after arriving in Houston, Marcus was sent on an errand by Richard, a delivery of documents to a high-rise building in downtown Houston, the headquarters of the Ellison Group. He had never been inside a building like that in his life. The lobby was marble and glass, with tall ceilings and the kind of quiet that money buys. He walked in carrying a manila envelope, wearing his work uniform, neat, clean, but unmistakably not the kind of person who belonged in that lobby. He approached the front desk. And that is when the elevator opened. Catherine Ellison stepped out, phone in one hand, coffee in the other, already deep in a conversation with her assistant walking beside her. She almost walked past him entirely. But something made her stop. She looked at him, not the way people in expensive buildings look at delivery workers, which is to say, not at all. She actually looked at him. And she said, simply, "Are you lost?" Marcus straightened. He said, "No, ma'am. I have a delivery for the Ellison Group." Catherine looked at the envelope, looked at him, and said, "I am the Ellison Group." She took the envelope. Their hands did not touch. She walked away. And Marcus stood in that marble lobby for 3 seconds longer than he needed to, watching her go, feeling something he could not name and could not explain. He told himself it was nothing. He went back to work. He went back to his small room, his 2 jobs, his family's phone calls, his $47 bank balance. He told himself it was absolutely nothing. But 3 days later, Richard called him into his office and said, "I just got a call from Harold Ellison's office. Catherine Ellison would like to offer you a position as a junior coordinator at the Ellison Foundation." Apparently she was impressed by something. Marcus stared at him. Richard smiled slowly and said, "Whatever you did in that lobby, it worked. I want you to think about that for a moment." A young man from Lagos, in a work uniform, carrying an envelope, and a billionaire's daughter saw something in him that made her stop. What do you think she saw? Tell me in the comments. If this story already has your heart beating a little faster, type "Why I'm still watching" in the comments right now. Let us see who is truly on this journey with Marcus and Catherine. Marcus took the position at the Ellison Foundation. It paid 3 times what he was making at Richard's company. For the first time since arriving in America, he felt something close to stability. He worked hard, the way Marcus always worked, quietly and completely, and within 2 months, Catherine noticed. She began calling him into meetings, asking his opinion on projects, inviting him to sit at tables where men in expensive suits barely acknowledge his presence. And slowly, in the way that real things happen, not dramatically, not with grand declarations, but in small moments, in late evenings working side by side on foundation reports, in shared cups of coffee and conversations that went longer than they needed to, Marcus and Catherine began to fall in love. It was Catherine who felt it first. She noticed the way Marcus never asked her for anything. Every man in her world wanted something: access, money, status, her father's network. Marcus wanted none of it. He worked because he believed in the work. He talked to her like she was a person, not a price. One evening, after everyone else had gone home, she asked him, "What do you actually want from your life, Marcus?" "Not for your family. For you." And Marcus was quiet for so long that she thought she had offended him. Then he said, "I want to build something that lasts. Something that my children can be proud of. Something that is mine, not because my family needed it, but because I chose it." Catherine looked at him in the quiet of that empty office and felt something she had not felt in years. She felt seen. Not as an Ellison. Not as a billionaire's daughter. Just seen. But the world outside that office was not quiet. Back in Lagos, Thomas and Gloria had heard through Richard that their son was now working at the Ellison Foundation, one of the most prestigious organizations in Houston. They did not know the details. They just knew their son had moved up. And so the calls intensified. His mother now called 3 times a week. The fabric had become a full wardrobe request. Tonya had added a laptop to the iPhone and the Brazilian hair. And Thomas, quietly, steadily, with the particular patience of a father who believes his son owes him everything, began asking about the house renovation every single Sunday without fail. Marcus was now earning more, yes. But he was also saving, building, trying to create a foundation for his own future for the very first time. And every call from home felt like hands reaching into that foundation and pulling bricks out one by one. And then Catherine found out about the calls. Not because Marcus told her, he would never have told her. She found out because one evening, his phone rang during a meeting and he stepped out to answer it, and she heard through the glass door, in the tense quiet of his voice, the unmistakable sound of a man managing expectations he did not create. When he came back in, she asked him directly, "Who was that?" He said, "My father." She said, "What did he want?" And Marcus, for the first time, told her everything. The fabric. The iPhone. The Brazilian hair. The car. The house renovation. The cousin he had never met. The church donation. The neighbor's daughter's school fees. He told her everything, calmly and without bitterness, the way you describe a weather condition, not something you chose, just something you live inside. When he finished, Catherine was very still for a long moment. Then she said, "And what do you want, Marcus?" He looked at her. And very quietly he said, "I think I want you." The room was completely silent. And then Catherine Ellison, the composed, powerful, always in control daughter of the most powerful black businessman in Texas, laughed. Not a polished laugh. A real one. The kind that escapes before you can stop it. And Marcus smiled for the first time in months. Have you ever told someone the truth, the whole messy, complicated, embarrassing truth, and instead of running, they stayed? Tell me in the comments if you have ever had a moment like that. 3 months later, Catherine told her father about Marcus. Harold Ellison did not take it well. Harold was a man who had spent his entire life building walls around his daughter, not out of cruelty, but out of a particular kind of love that believes protection means control. He had watched too many men try to use Catherine as a door into his world. He had seen her hurt before. And when she sat across from him at the dinner table and told him she was in love with a young man from Lagos who had arrived in America less than a year ago with almost nothing, Harold Ellison's first response was not a question. It was a statement. No. Just that. No. Catherine looked at her father and said, "That is not your decision to make." Harold said, "Catherine, I have built everything you have ever known. I have sacrificed everything for this family. And you want to hand it to a man who just got off a plane?" Catherine said very quietly, "That is exactly what someone said about you once, Daddy. That you were just a man from Alabama with nothing." The table went completely silent. Harold looked at his daughter for a long time. And then he stood up and walked out of the room without another word. Back in Lagos, something else was happening. Thomas, Marcus's father, had heard through a mutual contact of Richard's that his son was not just working at the Ellison Foundation, but that he was romantically involved with Catherine Ellison herself. The name Ellison meant nothing to Thomas at first. But Richard explained it to him slowly and carefully: the real estate empire, the foundation, the hundreds of millions of dollars, the most powerful black family in Houston. And Thomas went very quiet. Not with joy. With something more complicated. Because Thomas was a proud man. And pride, when it is threatened, does not always respond with grace. He called Marcus that same night. His voice was different, tighter, more careful. He said, "I hear you are with a rich woman." Marcus said, "I am with someone I love, Papa." Thomas said, "Does she know where you come from? Does she know about us?" Marcus said, "She knows everything." And Thomas said something that cut Marcus deeper than anything his father had ever said to him. He said, "Make sure she is not ashamed of us, Marcus. Because I will not be anyone's charity case. Not even for my son's happiness." Marcus sat with that phone call for 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of asking himself whether love, real love, the kind he had found with Catherine, was worth the fracture it was creating in the people he had loved longest. And on the third night, Catherine came to find him. She sat beside him and said, "Tell me what is happening inside you right now." And Marcus said, "I am afraid that loving you will cost my family their dignity. And I am afraid that walking away from you will cost me mine." Catherine took his hand. She said, "Then we do not walk away. We just have to be brave enough to tell the truth to all of them at the same time." What happened next was 3 separate moments of sacrifice, and each one will stay with you long after this video ends. The first sacrifice was Catherine's. She went to her father Harold and she laid everything on the table. She told him she was prepared to step back from the foundation, to walk away from the inheritance, to build something of her own from scratch, if that was what it took to be with Marcus freely and without conditions. She looked her father in the eye and said, "I have spent my whole life being the Ellison daughter. I would like to spend the rest of it just being Catherine. And Marcus is the only person who has ever made me feel like that is enough." Harold Ellison sat in his chair and looked at his daughter for a very long time. And for the first time in years, the powerful man who had never backed down from anything felt something loosen in his chest. Because he recognized what she was describing. He had felt it once himself, a long time ago, before the empire, before the money, with a woman who loved him when he had nothing. He had almost lost her to his own pride. He looked at Catherine and said, "You would really walk away from all of this?" She said, in a heartbeat. Harold closed his eyes. And when he opened them, he said, "Then bring him to dinner. The right kind of dinner. Where I actually talk to the man." The second sacrifice was Marcus's. He called his family, all 3 of them together on video, and he told them the truth. Not just about his finances this time. About everything. About Catherine. About love. About the fact that he had been so busy trying to be everything they needed that he had almost destroyed the one thing in America that was truly his. He said, "I love you all. I will always take care of this family. But I need you to understand that I am a person before I am a provider. And the woman I love sees that person. I need you to see him too." His mother cried. His sister Tonya was completely silent, the first real silence Tonya had been in since Marcus could remember. And his father Thomas, the proud man, the taxi driver who had given 20 years of his life to a dream he had placed on his son's shoulders, Thomas looked at his son through a phone screen from thousands of miles away and said something Marcus had never heard him say before. He said, "I am sorry, my son. I did not know how heavy I made it. I am proud of you, not for what you can give me. I am proud of you for who you are." Marcus pressed his hand over his mouth. And for the first time since he left home, he cried in front of his family. The third sacrifice was Thomas's own. 6 months later, Thomas sold the taxi, the second-hand car he had driven for 20 years, the one thing that was completely his, and used the money to fly to America. Not to ask for anything. Not to collect anything. But to meet Catherine Ellison face to face and to look her in the eye as a father, not as a poor man, not as a charity case, but as the man who raised the son she loved. He arrived at Houston Airport in his best suit, a dark blue one he had been keeping for special occasions for 15 years. Richard picked him up. And when Thomas walked into the restaurant where Marcus and Catherine were waiting, he stopped at the table and looked at Catherine for a long moment. Then he extended his hand and said, "I am Thomas, Marcus's father. I came to say thank you for seeing my son when I had forgotten to look." Catherine stood up. And she hugged him. Not a polite hug. A real one. The kind that says, "You are family now." Thomas stood in the middle of that Houston restaurant in his 15-year-old suit, being hugged by a billionaire's daughter, and he closed his eyes. And he wept. Quietly, with dignity, but he wept. Marcus and Catherine were married 14 months after they met in that marble lobby. It was not a billionaire's wedding, it was their wedding. Harold Ellison walked his daughter down the aisle and shook Marcus's hand at the altar with both of his, the way men do when words are not enough. Gloria wore the most beautiful fabric she had ever owned, not bought with remittance money sent under pressure, but chosen lovingly by Catherine herself, who had called Marcus's mother 3 weeks before the wedding and asked her, woman to woman, what her favorite color was. The answer was deep purple. And Gloria walked into that wedding in deep purple, looking like the mother of a king, because she was. Tonya was a bridesmaid. She had saved for her own dress. She had also gotten a full-time job by then, and the pride on her face that day had nothing to do with iPhones or Brazilian hair. It had to do with watching her brother choose himself, and watching that choice become something beautiful. And Thomas sat in the front row in a new suit that Marcus had bought for him, not because his father asked, but because Marcus wanted his father to know that when you give from love and not from pressure, the gift means something completely different. Thomas sat in that front row and watched his son marry a woman who loved him, truly loved him, and he thought about the taxi he had sold. And he did not regret it for a single second. 2 years after the wedding, Marcus became the executive director of the Ellison Foundation. Not because of Catherine. Not because of Harold. Because he had earned it, meeting by meeting, decision by decision, with the same quiet and complete dedication he had brought to everything in his life. Harold Ellison announced the appointment himself, at a foundation gala, in front of 200 people. He said, "I spent my whole life making sure no one could take advantage of my daughter. And then I met the one man who never tried to. And I almost lost him because of my own fear. Marcus is the best thing that has happened to this family, not because of what he brought with him, but because of who he is." Marcus sat at that table and felt, for the first time in his life, the particular peace of a man who has nothing left to prove. Back in Lagos, Thomas watched the gala live stream on a phone that Tonya held up for him because his eyes were not good enough for the small screen. And when Harold finished speaking, Thomas looked at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he said, very quietly, "To no one in particular, that is my son." And that, right there, is the lesson this story leaves in your hands. The weight of family love is real. The expectations of the people who raised you are real. But you cannot build a future on a foundation of pressure. You cannot love someone freely when you are drowning in obligation. And you cannot become the man or the woman you were always meant to be, until you are brave enough to tell the truth, hold the boundary, and trust that the people who truly love you will still be standing there when the dust settles. Marcus came to America with nothing but his hunger and his heart. He found love in the last place he expected. he lost himself in the pressure of his family's expectations. And then, slowly, painfully, beautifully, he found himself again. And everything that was meant for him came with it. Not every loss is the end. Some are the beginning of something greater. And sometimes, the person who sees you most clearly is the one standing in a marble lobby with coffee in one hand and a phone in the other, looking at you like you are exactly where you are supposed to be. So I want to hear from you right now, and I mean really hear from you. If you were Marcus, sitting in that airport with your entire family already spending money you had not earned yet, what would you have done differently? Would you have been as patient as he was? And if you were Catherine, a woman who had everything except someone who truly saw her, would you have been brave enough to risk it all for a man the world said was beneath you? Drop your answer in the comments. Every single one of them matters. And I want to ask you something even deeper. Has anyone in your life ever made a sacrifice for you the way Thomas sold that taxi? Not for money. Not for reward. Just to show up. Just to stand in a room and say, I see you, and I am proud of you. Because if someone has done that for you, I want you to go, right now, after this video, and tell them. Call them. Text them. Show up at their door. Because the people who sell their taxis to fly across the world just to shake the hand of the person you love, those people deserve to know what they mean to you while they are still here to hear it. And if you think this story moved you, if Marcus and Catherine left something in your chest that is still sitting there, wait until our next story. Because what happened to a woman who gave up her entire career to raise a family, and then one day her husband came home and said he had fallen in love with someone else, that story will completely redefine everything you think you know about forgiveness. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss a single word of it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying until the very end. And remember, love is not just a feeling. Love is a choice you make every single day, even when it costs you something. Especially when it costs you something.